think we're live now. Hey guys, we've got Lebain with us. We're going to play the intro and we'll get started. It's going to be an amazing show. And yeah. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic podcast. I'm really excited about my guest today. This is her second time on my show, but you guys might have not saw her first show. So today I have with me Lebain, because the reason why I say this is because YouTube took my first channel down. So that's why, I always preface this. But today I have with me Lebain. She's an ET experiencer, UFO researcher, and author of the Cosmic Slingshot. She's going to join me to reveal how reincarnation was edited out of the Bible, why it matters for understanding end times prophecy, and how alien abduction phenomenon connects to soul harvesting and reincarnation cycles. We will discuss hidden reincarnation teachings linked to the original Hebrew Bible, how the church's editing changed Christianity's understanding of the soul, why alien abductions often happen in childhood and their connection to reincarnation cycles, Jesus' teachings and ending on cycle of rebirth, and the role of soul harvesting in the disclosure movement. If you're ready to decode the biggest hidden truth in Christianity and connect it to alien contact, this episode is unmissable. And a little bit more about my guest, Lebain she's the author of Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo series. Elle is a Bible scholar, ET experiencer, UFO researcher. Her work bridges the gap between biblical prophecy, reincarnation, and the alien presence on Earth. And you can learn more about her at www.who'swhointhecosmiczoo.com. And I'd like to give her a big warm welcome back to the show. Ella, thanks so much for coming back on. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Rob. It's good to be here.
Yeah. I'm really excited for this. So it seems like you went really deep on this book with the Cosmic Slingshot.
Yes. Well, it was born out of pain. So, as you know, my other books, I connect dots to the end time prophecies and disclosure of alien life and extraterrestrials and helping people to discern their own experiences. And I've had Christians come to me and ask me, how about alien abductions. And when a pastor, as a matter of fact, this story is in the book, and she got very close to me and we were friends and everything. And she wanted to know how she can help her congregants who come to her for help with alien abductions. And so she came to me and she didn't like what I answered. And it really shocked me. And then other Christians too were just like in cognitive dissonance about it. And, basically my short answer to her was that it's connected to past lives. So if you want to stop it in this life, you have to look at what happened, what started in the past. So, as above, so below, that's an old Hermetic philosophy. And, we have laws on earth and there's laws in heaven and there's spiritual laws, whether people are aware of them or not, we're, a product of those. And when we make agreements, contracts, agreements, covenants with whatever, however, why, it doesn't matter. The fact is that they were done in the past, they carry over. And so that's what I was trying to tell her about breaking contracts and agreements with the past. And, it's much more complex than that, but she just could not understand that. This is a core belief of Christians that you live once and then there's the judgment, which is Hebrews 9 verse 27, which they always use. But so I got into it and I thought, wait a second, there's something wrong here. And studying the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament have to match. They have to corroborate. It's the Old Testament is the prophecy and the New Testament is the fulfillment. It's like a right leg and a left leg. It walks together. And scripture must prove scripture. That's actually a verse in the Bible. And Hebrews 9:27 doesn't corroborate with anything in the Old Testament. Okay. In fact, just the opposite. So that's when I started to dive deep into this and found not only the history of why and how and who stopped deleted reincarnation out of the Bible, which was basically 571 AD, the Council of Nicaea. They were, involved.
Council of Nicaea, right?
Yes, they were involved in editing, and I was shocked to learn this. So that was under the Emperor Justinian. And so the Empress Theodora, she started out as a peasant. She was born a peasant, worked her way up as a prostitute, and became the concubine of the emperor, and eventually became his empress. So she worked her way up to the top, and she was irritated with the conversation between the monks and all the people as they were editing the Bible. And there was a lot of talk about rebirth and reincarnation. And she didn't like that. She wanted to be venerated and remembered as a goddess of Rome, like all the statues around her. She didn't want to be remembered as a peasant, or that people would say she would come back as a peasant. It was purely narcissistic inspiration. So she ordered the monks to delete all the scriptures relating to reincarnation out of the Bible. Now, Rob, one thing we can always count on, and that's human error. And those monks were only as good as their understanding of the Hebrew, because they left like over 24 scriptures behind, plus a whole chapter. Okay, Ezekiel chapter 37, the entire chapter is all about the reincarnation of ancient Israel. So that's the famous Valley of the Dry Bones story. They made songs about it. And
I don't know this story. Can you tell us a little bit about it? I'm interested because I know a little bit about ancient history. I have like roots in that area. Like my dad was like Lebanese, but my mom's Greek and Italian. So like I always followed like Mediterranean history, and I know the Romans controlled a large part of the world, right? And like they had their land over Israel, right? Like too, like when Jesus was supposedly crucified, right? Like if he was, I don't know if he was. I know some people debate that. Some people say he really was. I don't know. I'd love to get your opinion on that too. That they were like Rome had all that land, right? At that time. Is that correct?
Yes. During the times of Christ, Israel was ruled by the Roman Empire. That is absolutely true. And, as a matter of fact, that land has been ruled by almost every empire on the earth. So in my books, I go through the timeline. I mean, it's been transferred so many times. It's been fought over so many times. And why? Is because it's a spiritual battle as well as a real estate issue and religious wars and all that stuff that we see and know. But there's the stuff we don't see that inspires all these battles over Jerusalem and over Israel, because there's ancient space portals there. So and that dovetails into the end time prophecy, because Jesus said that when he ascended, the angels were there with the disciples. They were looking up as he went up into a cloud. And what is that cloud? These are the Lord's cloud ships. And they said, what are you looking at? Just as he left is exactly how he's going to return, meaning in the same spot, which is exactly what the prophecy says, on the Mount of Olives. And why is that? Because it's a portal. So this is a reason why they're always fighting over that. But I
have a question too. I have to ask you this, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to,
okay.
I love this topic. This is so interesting. I've thought at times that the Anunnaki might have created religions, like all of them. I mean there might not be much validity to it, but I know you studied under Sitchin. Like, have you heard people ask that question before? That maybe did the gods create religion so man would be confused and we would fight with each other? It's just a theory of mine, because it seems like religions cause a lot of fighting. You know what I mean? But like, I'd love to hear what you think, because you're much more scholarly in that subject than me.
Well, you're absolutely right. I have a chapter in my book called "The Aliens Created Religion," but there's religion and there's relationship. So just to discern this for people of faith who actually walk in faith every day. Faith is a currency. It gets you from point A to point B. It gets you through life, and that's a separate thing than a religious construct and a theocracy and all of that. And yes, the aliens have infiltrated and been involved in that. But then again, so have humans. But here's what happened. So this is the connection to the harvesting that you talked about at the beginning. So human life has gone from the beginning. In the beginning of the Bible, people lived to be 960. Like Methuselah lived to 969. Then the floods of Noah came, and human life only goes up. The telomeres go up to 120. People are lucky if they live to be in their 80s or 90s. So that's a vast difference. So what happened there? So in my opinion, the Anunnaki genetically manipulated humankind. So this is my theory. Yes, I did study with Sitchin, and I differentiate myself from him because it's like research is like a baton race. So like you pass the baton on to the next person, and then they run with it. And I loved him, and I loved his research, but I don't think that it was 100% accurate. Okay, so I took that and went down another rabbit hole, and I went further down into the past than that the Anunnaki created humankind. I went into Atlantis, where humans lived and had everything, okay, and lost it all. So that's where we're at now. We're in this downgrade. That is what they call the fall of humankind, which was involved with all the curses that got doled out in the book of Genesis. That's real, but that the DNA was manipulated. So we went from 12 strands of DNA to 2. So when the geneticists look at our DNA today, they see they don't understand, and they go, that's junk DNA, and it's really just disabled. So like, for instance, the like Sitchin called Adam and Eve a race, the Evademic race, which I reiterated in my books in reference to him. And they had it all. Okay, they had everything fired up. So think superhuman, the ability to be clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, all of these extrasensory powers that we would call it today that they're different. That was the norm. So the Anunnaki came and they wanted to create a slave race. And that is evidenced in Sitchin's material, because they needed humans to do their dirty work, mine the earth for resources, mainly gold, but other stuff too. So they downgraded the DNA. This is the fall. And they gave humans just enough to have intelligence to understand and listen to orders and do the tasks involved. So meanwhile, we have all these wars and divisions, as you talked about, and that is, in my opinion, orchestrated, which I call Machiavellian alien presence on Earth. So this is a group of aliens that live with us. They live inside the Earth. I call them the Draconian Empire. They're the reptilians and the lizard people, and there's a hierarchy of them. They're not all the same. They have different roles and different, it's like militaristic, compartmentalized hierarchy. And most people never see them, except we have all these legends and fairy tales about dragons, which is true. This happened. That's why they have it written in stone. That's why there's statues of all over Europe of like St. George on the dragon, and all of that is based on something that happened in the past. And then when the floods came, a lot of the beings that that were on the surface ended up either drowning or going inside the earth into the caverns of the earth. So some of them survived, evidenced in the Bible by why the floods of Noah, which was to wipe out the Nephilim, these giants, these miscreants, these monsters that did all kinds of horrible things to both humans and animals, why they came back, why they were on the earth again, is because they didn't wipe them all out. They went inside the earth. So the human lifespan was genetically manipulated and artificially shortened because of the cycles of reincarnation, because this particular race of aliens wants to use us. They see us humans as an energy source. So like we talked about how we lost some of our ability, they haven't. They can see what we can't see. So like cats can. I mean, look at cats. They can see into the spirit realm. They can see stuff around you. They can see spirits and beings. And most humans can't unless you work on it and, have altered states and altered consciousness and all of that. But these beings can. So when they look at us, they see us for how we truly are. So like you and I were sitting here in 3D, but it's who we really are is our soul body. Okay, so I am not in my body. My body is in me. Okay,
Yeah.
And this has been scientifically proven that that we have this glow, we have this light around us, and that when we take our last breath and the body ceases to exist, that light goes out, which means that's the soul energy that leaves the body. So each time we get into conflicts and anger and passion and everything, our energy field gets heated up. We get passionate, and it doesn't matter whether it's negative or positive. It's energy, period. And that's what they're after. So they shorten the life. This is, I know this sounds really controversial, but I prove this, like through the timeline, through the scriptures, and also through the prophecies, because the promises of God are very specific that when the Messiah returns, he is coming to restore us back to what I call the glory body, which is all the 12 strands of DNA, everything is operating. In the meantime, we've been pretty much held captive on this, what in the Gnostic Gospels talk about as a prison planet. And I'm not, that's not the first time we've heard that concept. So it's no coincidence that like in Isaiah 61 and Luke 14, that Yeshua, Jesus said, I have come to set the captives free. Well, who are the captives? That would be us. Exactly. Yeah. So he's the kinsman redeemer, and his promise is to restore humankind back to the original image and likeness of God, which is how we were originally created. We've been down.
Is that, do you think, why they say Jesus said, you'll be able to do all the things I can do plus more? And do you think that was a real quote?
Yes, absolutely. It was a real quote. And, the crucifixion absolutely happened. The resurrection also happened, and so did the ascension, and he will return. So how do I know that with such certainty? Besides my faith, that's an intangible thing. We have the scriptures, but it's not just the scriptures, it's written in the stars. Okay, before the scriptures were written on earth, it was written in the stars. And they corrupted the original cosmology. They changed it so many times. First the Greeks, then the Romans, they all renamed the planets and stuff and constellations after them. They wrote their stories over it. So my 6th book, Heaven's Witness, is basically all about the original Mazarot, which in Hebrew, that's the constellations. And each star, the Bible tells us that humans were tasked with naming the animals and the birds and the fish, and we were in charge, stewards of the earth. But it was the Lord who's in charge of the stars, and he named the stars. So it's no coincidence, and I connect these dots for people so that they can see the progression, that the books of Enoch tell us that there were 200 men. Okay, they call them fallen angels, but they were men. Every time angels showed up on earth, they manifested as men. Human. There was one instant that it was a female, okay, recorded in the Bible. Not that that was the only one, but that's what we have in the record. But in the books of Enoch, they name them, 200 of them that came through Mount Hermon, another ancient space portal. And they came to earth and they took wives. They didn't just rape women, they married them. And there's a reason for that, because it's a covenant. So they wanted to be able to have the ability to reincarnate their seed on earth. So that means they had to do it legally through marriage, so that they can create a bloodline that was legally allowed to be on earth. And this is like, cosmic law stuff, but it is
deep, right? This is really deep. This is really interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is amazing. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Thank you. This is
no,
awesome.
Oh, my pleasure. And so all of this is in Cosmic Slingshot if people want to look at it deeper. But, so the Bible tells us of all these different seeds that are living on the earth and still are today, which is why everybody's different. There's not, there's a lot of dissension, and there's all this racism, and there's reasons for that. I mean, besides the fact that the reptilians are fanning the flames because they want to see it, because here's the thing. They are afraid of what we are capable of, and that is unity. When we come together, humans, and we all get unified, okay, there's power there, and they don't want us to have that. So keeping us divided serves them. Okay, not us. Yeah. But the Messiah, and we might be so far gone that it's hard for us to even get to that point. And that's why the unique job of the Messiah is to bridge that gap and bring everyone together. And I'm not just talking about earth people. His promise is that he is going to bring other humans that God created that live off the earth or extraterrestrial when he returns, so that we can all be one under one shepherd. That's John 10:17. That's one of the promises of Jesus. Who are these? And he calls them sheep. So sheep is a biblical vernacular for people. So who are these other people that he's talking about that he has to bring with him when he returns? That would be our extraterrestrial human brothers and sisters and aunts and cousins, and that are out there. There is life out there. The Bible tells us that. So there's, and the stars, the Mazarot, talk about all these different dramas between the humans and the dragons. Like the Draco is a constellation, which is a dragon, and our Earth used to be the pole star used to be pointing towards Draco, and now we're on our way to Vega. So this extraterrestrial alien presence on the earth is ancient, nothing new. What the religious construct did was suppress it, cover it up, and basically replace religion. So replacement theology is at the core of all of this. Okay, so, and if we look at that as a metaphor for what they're planning in the end times, to literally replace humans, not just replace beliefs and theology, which is kind of an intangible thing. We're talking about like physical beings, and that's part of this alien human hybridization program. And where are these hybrids? They're being grown off planet, so either underground, inside the moon, on the ships, off planet, to be brought to the earth at a particular appointed time that is going to end up replaced. That's their goal. Whether they succeed or not, that's another story. So there's all this stuff. So it serves them to keep us divided because they harvest energy. So the soul energy doesn't die. Energy doesn't cease to exist. It just transforms. And so the cosmic slingshot is basically the English translation of the Hebrew word for reincarnation, which is Kafakela. So Kafakela was coined by King David, and actually his wife Abigail at a later, when she had said to him, and he was a musician and a poet, and she said, oh, God is going to defeat your enemies, and like a Kafakela, send them into the cosmic slingshot to go round and come back and serve you. That was how that word got coined, and it literally means the cosmic. So he was famous for killing a giant with a slingshot. So she called it a cosmic slingshot, that he goes into the afterlife and comes back. And this is like a core belief of Judaism. It's in every single book. It's in the Torah, it's in the Tanakh, it's in the Zohar, the Talmud and the Mishnah. It's talked about on every level. So they believe that every generation has a Moshe, which is Moses, and every generation has an Erev Rav, which are the evil religious spirit. So this is a big piece in my book series that I discern, because, as I said in the beginning, to differentiate people of faith who have a relationship, a dynamic, intimate, daily relationship with the living God through spirit, whatever, okay? And that's a differentiation to religion and constructs and theocracies. And there's a spirit that's attached to that. And that spirit doesn't come from God. That spirit comes from the God of this world, who is Satan. And the Bible tells us that the God of this world is Satan, the prince of the powers of the air. And Satan is a Hebrew word that means rebel or adversary or, accuser. So there's, in my books, I pluralize it because there's a group of them. There's many Satans, there's many accusers, there's a whole rebellion. And that's what we are, like monkey in the middle, so to speak. We're being fought over our energy, the real estate, the Earth, space, and everything. And Earth is a very special planet. It has 11 dimensions, and the Bible tells us that all this stuff is happening inside. So we know that not only the alien presence is inside, but the 3 levels of hell that is discerned in the Bible, Gehenna, Sheol, they're all inside Hades. They're all inside the Earth. But then there's also 3 levels of heaven. Okay, that they call Abraham's bosom. Jesus called it paradise. Even Henry David Thoreau said heaven is above us as well as under our feet. So he knew this. It's in the Bible. So there's no coincidence that at the end of this age, one of the promises is that the Lord comes, Jesus comes to collect his redeemed from the inside of the earth and the surface of the earth. 2 Thessalonians, which a lot of Christians call the rapture, there's 10 raptures in the Bible, and there's 3 end time raptures, and this one happens in 2 parts, because it says first the dead in Christ come out of the earth. They rise first. He comes to collect them, and then the people who are on the earth at the end, they get taken up. Okay, so that's a separate event. So we know that there's a lot happening inside the earth, that the earth is caverned out, not just physically, but that there's multiple dimensions that are happening simultaneously, which explains why people see beings and then they disappear. So I have a chapter in my 4th book on UFOs in Israel, and that a long time ago in the 90s, I was communicating with Barry Hamish, who was like this Israeli UFO researcher, and he gave me permission to republish the stories. And these were modern day Israelis who had encounters with giants in modern day Israel. Okay. And then there were these crashes. We don't hear too much about that here. We just focus on our crashes, like Roswell and Socorro. But there were several crashes in Israel. And one thing that caught my attention was the one on Sheikh Mona Beach. So Sheikh Mona Beach is where Elijah's cave is. So Elijah, I call him a frequent flyer because he was one of the ones that never died, and he was taken up and brought back and taken up, and like Enoch and Melchizedek. Also, there's no record of his death, and so these are like what we would call ascended beings. Anyway, what's up with that? Why are there these crashes? And the crashes seem to be happening in the same places. And that could be something that there's like battles over a portal. Because if that was where Elijah used to come and go, and now there's crashes, there was a couple of crashes there, then maybe they're fighting over a portal. That's just my hypothesis. I don't know. But there's something going on there. Okay. And the giants that these Israelis have seen and disappear, where do they go? They go into some other dimensional portal. So these are interdimensionals that and it explains a lot of the paranormal stuff that people report on. I
agree. So wait, what? I'm trying to figure. Why are the abductions happening then? Are the Greys working for the? Are the Greys working for the reptilians, and then the Greys want to harvest our DNA to make hybrids, so the hybrids eventually take over the planet? That's their. And then, do you believe that they're demonic, like the Greys, or what?
I do. Yes, everything you said. That is and there's a reason why people see the Greys and they don't see the reptilians. The reptilians are really ugly and monstrous and scary looking, so they freak people out. Okay. And so we've had, there's a lot of abduction stories, and they shapeshift. So they're able to present themselves as human. Okay. And so people think that they're dealing with like the Nordics or the Syrians because they show up in these like tight spacesuits and they're human and they're good looking and, they look like Avengers or whatever. And they think, okay, they're safe. Travis Walton, that's probably one of the most famous abduction cases. He was freaking out with the Greys, and then the humans showed up and he calmed down. Now, whether those were real humans or shape-shifting reptilians into humans, I don't know, but I question that because that's something they do. They know how to shapeshift, and we've seen it. People are seeing it. It's happened. I published this. There's a bunch of stories, and they live amongst us. And the Bible corroborates this because it talks about the serpent seed, the Nephilim seed, the Anakim, which is, a word for Anunnaki, and the Anakim is Hebrew, Anunnaki is Sumerian, very similar. The Raphaim, there's all these groups that are recorded in the Bible that are born on the earth. So they have the ability to come in through this door of reincarnation. So not like, okay, here we are today. There's like 8 billion people on the planet, approximately, give or take, more than any other time in our known history. That's another piece to look at. Why is that? Because we're getting to the end of the age. So everyone is giving this last chance to come, to return, to get things right, and the Jewish Bible talks about the reason for reincarnation. One of them, there's like 5-6 reasons, but I think there's like 101 reasons because everybody has all these stories, and God is merciful and God gives people different chances, and he wants people to get things right, but he sends people back for different reasons. And so the Torah says it's teshuvah, and teshuvah means correction. So there's soul evolution, there's correcting mistakes, and there's marriage. Marriage is a big piece because you can reincarnate to get things right with your soulmate, because maybe in another, and it says this is there's a whole bunch of words on this in the Zohar as well, that you might have been married and then screwed it up, and so you come back to make it right, because people are soulmated in heaven. so they have to get things straight on earth. I connect dots to some near-death experiences as well, because this is what Christians can't understand, that God will give people another chance they believe in resurrection, and for some reason they can't make that connection to reincarnation. But it's the same God doing it for the same reason. If he's going to put somebody back into the same body, like a near-death experience, for the reason to go back and learn how to live right, like he's told, like Howard Storm, who was an atheist and died. He was a famous near-death experience, and he died and waiting for surgery in Paris, socialized medicine. And then the angel took him up he was going to hell. He was actually going down this black hole, and these beings were chewing on his ear and his body, and he was sinking deeper and deeper. And he heard this voice that said, pray. That's it. One word, pray. And he's sinking, and he's like, how do I pray? I don't know how to pray. He was an atheist. He didn't know anything about prayer. So he went down into this like deep 5-year-old memory that surfaced when he was in kindergarten. And the teacher taught him a song. Jesus loves me, this I know, 'cause the Bible tells me so, right? Everybody knows that. And he said that out loud. And within a New York second, that angel, this is his story, he reported this, the angel reached down into the hole, pulled him up, and brought him to heaven and put him right in front of Jesus. And he didn't want to leave. And he was like, oh, this is it. This is what I've been missing, And of course he repented and he apologized for all the horrible things he said about him and this and that. And Jesus said, I forgive you, but I'm going to put you back because I want you to learn how to live right for me. Okay. So that reason for putting him back in his body and saving him from hell, it's the same God doing the same thing. What happens if the body you can't revive it? Then you need a new body. So God will give you a new body and say, okay, I'm sending you back. You're going to start off as a baby again. And this is going to be your life. And it's all done with guides and angels and the Lord. And you reincarnate with the, according to the Torah, you reincarnate with your loved ones as well as your enemies. Go figure. But God wants people to work things out. He is the God of reconciliation and restoration. And that is one of the main reasons for reincarnation. But the good news is that Yeshua, Jesus, promises to end it. He's going to end the cycles of reincarnation. First of all, he ends death. So if there's no death, then there can be no rebirth, right? But there's another promise in the book of Revelation that I, extract. It's in the Cosmic Slingshot, and that is where he says, you go in, you come out, you go into your Father's house. The Father's house is a metaphor for heaven. In my Father's house, there are many mansions. I have to go and prepare a place for you. So the word mansion we think of as, like earthly homes, big homes and stuff like that. But it was also an ancient Vedic word that was used for stars. All right. So, in the heavens are vast, right? So that could be what he's talking about. But he's very specifically talks about his Father's house, that you go into your Father's house and then you go out to find pasture and then come back. And then he says, then you'll go out no more. Meaning you won't leave it anymore. You won't have to reincarnate. Okay, so that's another level of, like eternity. So that's another promise of God. And that's that's good news. I mean, it's not like people are stuck in this wheel. And hell is very real, but a lot of Christians get this confused with the lake of fire. The lake of fire is a place outside of the earth. It's in the universe. It's a star system. And this was created for Satan and his rebel angels, everyone who followed him into the rebellion. It's not created for humans, but humans end up going there with him because they align with him at the end. So hell is inside the earth. And the Torah tells us, and this is all in Judaism, that they suppressed. the Church of Rome suppressed all this stuff through replacement theology. Okay, so they wanted to change the identity of Jesus. They wanted to strip the Jewishness out of him. He was a Jewish rabbi. They did all kinds of manipulations to keep people in their under their control, under their thumb. And Rome, when they made rules in Rome for religion or for law, it was one and the same. That's why our founding fathers established the doctrine of the separation of church and state, because the ancient world didn't have that. And we see this today with Islam. It's the same kind of theocracy. They make a rule, it's a religious rule, and it becomes governmental law. And that's how Rome operated. So in 325 AD, when Constantine had that vision of the cross in the sky, which I have shown pictures and proved that this was a spaceship, because we're seeing the same cross show up around this lighted cross show up around the sun. Believe it or not, I have pictures of it. It's publicly posted on my Facebook if anyone wants to go find it. And he was inspired by that, because the whole world at that time was Christianity was growing. And he was threatened that was going to take over. So, as a ruler, as an emperor, he was thinking, well, if you can't beat him, join him. But he didn't want to do that, because he was worshiping Mithras, and he died. The records say he died worshiping Mithras, not Jesus. So what did he do? He decided to incorporate them into his already existing established religion of Rome, which was the Babylonian religion. And this is why today they haven't changed. They haven't changed the costume. They haven't changed the rituals. All they did was switch out the gods. All right. So they took Semiramis and made her Mother Mary, and they took Mithras and made it Jesus. And then Constantine's creed couldn't be more of a doctrine of replacement theology and the doctrines of anti-Semitism than anything else. And that's why I tell Christians, if you really want to get right with God, you need to repent of that corporately, because it's still an old demonic assignment on their soul. So this is where the aliens come in. The Greys are work for the reptilians, and they are doing this alien human hybridization program, creating hybrids, because that is their goal, is to replace us. So the book of Daniel tells us about the end times. And the end times, there's four empires that ruled the earth. And the last one was the Roman Empire, which never really died completely. It just got transformed. And now they call it the Vatican, which, by the way, is a Latin word which means divining serpent. And they name that after the goddess Vaticanus, who is the goddess of the prophecy of the snakes. Okay? You can't make this stuff up. So that's why Rome, which is the city that sits on 7 hills, which is today's Vatican, which is kind of a sovereign nation in and of itself. It has its own government, plays a starring role in the end time prophecy. Okay, so you know how that old saying, oh, Rome wasn't built in a day, but it gets destroyed in one. So it says that Rome will be destroyed in one day. So that could be a great earthquake or an explosion. I don't know. But before that happens, the false prophet, which is the Roman Church, which is the Pope, props up this antichrist, which creates this mass deception on the earth, which involves the alien presence. So this is a being that the prophecy tells us is going to have the power to pull fire down from heaven, which is biblical vernacular for alien technology or direct energy weapons or all the stuff that we are dealing with today. And this is also, now this is kind of an interesting piece, because most Christians reject reincarnation. However, some eschatologists believe that the Antichrist is the reincarnation of Nimrod. So I took note of this because I thought, well, who was Nimrod? Nimrod ruled over ancient Babylon, right? But who was the Lord of Babylon? According to Sitchin and the Sumerian tablets, it was Marduk. And that's, he didn't only rule over Babylon, he ruled Nibiru. He was the Lord of Nibiru. And that's why they named Mars after him. Mars is named after Marduk. So if Marduk was the, came through Nimrod, and they believe that the Antichrist is going to be the reincarnation of Nimrod, then maybe that's really Marduk, and that's the final battle between Yeshua and Marduk over the earth. So that's just my assessment. It's in the book, Cosmic Slingshot.
Wow, this is amazing. Let me see here. Let me see if questions I have for you. We covered a lot, but let me see here. Let me see here. Okay, so you said the true value in research is not just finding the answer you're looking for, but to find an answer you weren't looking for. What answer surprised you the most during your research for the Cosmic Slingshot?
Well, the fact that it's all over the Bible, okay, and yet Christians have, they just like have this mantra, like, oh no, it's appointed unto man once to die and then the judgment. And that scripture I looked at, as I told you at the beginning, there's no corroborating scripture with it. So I believe that was not only rogue, but that it was put in there and it was manipulated, because it's just the way it's worded. So really the truth is that after each lifetime, you get reevaluated. So every lifetime is judged. It's not just one judgment. There's multiple judgments in the Bible. There's the one that happens at the end of the millennial reign, which is called the Great White Throne Judgment, which, but each time you live, you have a type of judgment. Okay. And people say, well, you're judging yourself. You get to reflect on your life. You have this past life review, but it's also with guides, angels, and the Lord. So let's call it a judgment. So that scripture is a misnomer, because it really means that after each lifetime. And I prove this, that Yeshua and his disciples discussed reincarnation. So, and this was all part of what they probably deleted, okay, because it's kind of like hanging, it's like missing something. So, and I fill in the gap in the book. So the disciples are asking Christ, Jesus, who are you? Like, who were you in the past? Because the thinking back then is everybody had to have been somebody. You were the reincarnation of so-and-so. And today's Jews talk about it like past lives, like what you had for dinner last night. Everybody's always talking about it. And that's how they were in the past too. So they would say, who are you? And are you Elijah? They thought he was Elijah. And this is written in the New Testament. And he said, no, Elijah already came. He was John the Baptist. Okay. And that matches. But
who is Elijah? Who is Elijah? Who was Elijah? Like, that's the question I have. Like, which one was?
Elijah was a prophet of God, which is in the book of Kings. It's the story of Ahab and Jezebel, and Ahab basically lost the kingdom of Israel because he married the wrong woman, and she was one of the rebels against the God of Israel, and she was doing all this witchcraft and everything. And Elijah, she was depressing him. He wanted to commit suicide because of her, but God was with him, and God created all these miracles through him. And like, he went through this portal, all right, which it says he ran really, really, really fast. That was like saying he went through a portal to get ahead of Ahab. And then there was no rain, but God sent rain. It made it, was all muddy, and he ends up, he's all, comes to Jezreel all muddy, and Elijah's like dry as a bone, and God protected him and basically used him to put him down and Jezebel down. And it was Jehu who became king after Ahab, who literally physically killed Jezebel and pushed her off a balcony, and she ends up being eaten by dogs. So she never got a burial. You know, she didn't have like a normal thing, which is why today people call that spirit the Jezebel spirit, like as if it was after a woman. But all these demons are really male. So whatever demon was in her was already had a name before she had it, you know? So Elijah never died. Elijah was one of the frequent flyers. He went up, he went down. God sent him back and forth to earth a few times. So that's why they said, who are you? They thought he was, and in Passover every year, they always set a table and a place setting and a glass of wine, and they open the door for Elijah, because they believe, that when Elijah comes, the Messiah is going to follow. So, and so if you take John the Baptist as the last Old Testament prophet, okay, he was there to prepare the way for the Lord, who was Yeshua. Okay, so Yeshua said, no, Elijah already came. That was John the Baptist, but he never answered who he was. So that was something that I went down a rabbit hole, pieced all these scriptures together from the New Testament into the Old. And my conclusion was that he is the reincarnate. He was the reincarnation of Melchizedek, who also never died. So there's no coincidence why in the New Testament they call Jesus the high priest after the order of Melchizedek. But the Israelites had this rule about priests, that you had to come out of the tribe of Levi. But Jesus wasn't born out of the tribe of Levi. He was born out of the tribe of Judah. Okay, so his priesthood comes from heaven. It's an authority that is divine, that comes extraterrestrial. It's outside of the earth, not earthly. So, like, for instance, that third temple that they're getting ready to build, when you see that go up, you can start counting down. They've already picked the high priest, and he comes out of the tribe of Levi. So there's this whole parallel going on here. And there's so many scriptures that corroborate this that it blew my mind. Okay?
Wait. I gotta ask you this. What do you think is gonna happen when they put the thing up? Do you think that this is gonna signify some bad things are coming, or something's happening?
What thing? The temple?
When they put the temple, yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, the third temple, the antichrist is going to take over it, and he's going to declare himself God, and he's going to demand worship. So the Jews are recreating, or want to recreate, this temple. It hasn't happened yet. And what's blocking it are the Muslims. So this is like a whole nother conversation of this piece of end time prophecy as to who this Antichrist figure is. He, in my opinion, comes out of the Muslim world, because it says that there's a war. So we're not there yet. Okay.
But we're damn close, right? Because look at what's going on in Iran and Israel, right? But they've been fighting for thousands of years, to say both, it's like it could be, but then also they've been fighting forever too, right? It's like crazy, right? It's like,
it is, and they are a peace. But what happens next is that there's going to probably be a regime change in Iran. So there were two words in the Bible, two names of ancient Iran: Persia and Elam. And Elam is the southern part of, which is where Tehran is. And that's also where the destruction happened, when the Americans destroyed their nuclear facility, which was in that area. This is like part of southern area, which is part of a prophecy that just got fulfilled. But what happens next is that there has to be this period of time of peace and security before all hell breaks loose. So we're seeing the seeds and all the players get all ready, like a chessboard, for this final war, World War III. But there's going to be a period of peace first, a false peace. Okay. And then all hell breaks loose. So it says 10 the revived Roman Empire. So I kind of interrupted myself earlier. I wanted to tell you this about the prophecy in Daniel, where it talks about the four empires, and then the final empire, the fifth one, is actually a mixture of, iron mixed with clay, which is the revived Roman Empire, okay, which never really died. It just got transformed, and all the countries on the map, geographically speaking, that used to be part of the Roman Empire are now Muslim. So the Muslim world is a piece of this, and they're the ones that go against Israel. So there's a 10-headed dragon. It's a caliphate. And this person, this man of perdition, the Assyrian, he's got so many names, comes out of that and literally makes a peace treaty between them and Israel. So even though, Trump and every American president's been trying to do, this guy actually succeeds in ending this war. And that's World War III, the war of Gog and Magog, which is Ezekiel 38. So Ezekiel 37 has already happened. And Ezekiel 38 is what we're seeing, get ready for. And Magog is actually the ancient land of where Turkey is today. So, but it's also more than Turkey. It's part of, which is parts of Russia and where the ancient Scythians used to hang out, and parts of Iran. So there's parts of Iran that are in this prophecy, but there's this other part of Iran that ends up becoming part of an alliance. So that's what we're seeing now. So we're going to see a regime change, probably, and there's no coincidence that September 21st, we're having a solar eclipse, and the shadow happens right over Tehran. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Tehran, Iran.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like, wow, this is insane. Like, this is wow. But I was gonna say, we've been going about 56 minutes. Do you want to go longer, or do you think we've covered enough for today? It's up to you. We can do either.
I'm here for you if you want to go over time, no problem. If you want to
I'm just finding this so interesting. So, like, what do you think Trump's whole piece is in all this? Do you think he has
his whole MO is to create he wants peace. Okay. So he's already created the Abraham Accords, which was established in his first term. And he wants to get the other players to get on board with that. And there's a very good possibility that this regime change in Iran, which would go back to the Shah's son, which is Reza Pahlavi, who, by the way, is leading the movement for the regime change in Iran. And he's just laid out a 100-day plan last week. And that puts us right after that eclipse, right? 3 months from now. What
kind of regime change does he want? He's the Shah's son, though. When the Shah was, for people that don't know this, when the Shah was president of Iran, and yes, he was the president of Iran, it wasn't a Muslim country then, right? Or it was, but like they kept it more democratic. They say that like the Shah was installed by the United States. Some people think that as a conspiracy. They think that he was like our guy in Iran to kind of like, so we could keep our eye on that or something like that. Do you agree with that or something like that?
Yeah, that's a part of the mix. It goes way back because like his father, who was like in the turn of the early 1900s, and then he was that Shah's son. So they both, it's kind of like a generational curse and blessing, if you want to look at it like that, because the Shah's father went up against the Khomeini, who was a bloodline, back in the early 1900s, and he won. So that's why Iran was more of a secular type state. And yes, our government was working with them because they wanted, good deals on the oil and all this kind of stuff. And they were secular. Okay, their religion was Muslim, but there's two sides of Muslim. Right? There's two sides of Islam, and it's the jihadists, it's the Sharia law people that they're the ones that fund all the terrorism, and that's what the regime is. That's Khomeini right now. So the Khomeini right now is actually the grandson, and Risa Pahlavi is also the grandson of the original Shah. So it's almost like a bloodline, and they go back and forth. So his father, was the one who got deposed, right? The one who went into exile and then died shortly thereafter because he had cancer. And then his son ended up being raised outside of Iran. So he's been working with everybody, everyone in the secular world. So there's a lot of support around him to return, and the Iranians want that. They want that old life back, which was 46 years ago. Women wore mini skirts and bikinis, and they did. And then the Khomeini took over, and it's like this war on women, and they get beaten up if their burqas on sideways, and it's just nut making. Okay, and
I'm sorry. I mean, I always tell people I was raised like Christian Lebanese, and like I heard stories about how like I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 1980, but I heard about like how in like the 60s and 70s they called like Lebanon the pearl of the Middle East. They said like everybody used to go there, and then I heard in the 80s like from people that were over there, because I live in a town where there's a lot of like, I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There's a lot of like in my town especially, there's a lot of Greeks and Italians and Lebanese or Syrians, but like it's like a big Christian, I'm not Christian. I say I'm more spiritual, but I mean, this is just what I grew up with, but I mean like, but that just happens to be my ethnic background too. But no, but like I heard from people that were like living over there, they were dealing with the whole war with the Muslims, like the Christians were, and there were even Christian militia groups like fighting against the Muslims in Lebanon back then in the 80s. But I tell people this, you saw Lebanon turned from a country that was much more progressive to something that got a little bit dulled down with Islam, over time, and I didn't kind of like that, and I saw it when I watched Bourdain go over to Beirut a couple times. I don't know if you remember, he got caught over there in 2006. Like I talk about this a lot. I was a big fan of his show. And he was filming a show in Lebanon, and that's when the war broke out with Hezbollah and Israel. And he was doing a no reservation show over there, and he got caught like in one of the hotels, and like it was so wild, But I mean, yes, I've always followed what goes on over there for a long time, and I've always followed like the ancient history too, because like I said, my mom's Greek and Italian, so I've always followed like ancient Greek history, I love that,
My mother also was Italian Greek.
Really? That's so cool. Yeah, that's how I found out about the Anunnaki. I was looking in 2000. So I used to listen to Art Bell when I was a kid. I would like, I found out about Art Bell in like 1999, before the word podcast was even, and then I kind of, like light and stuff like that. But then in 2015, I had a reawakening. I found out about the story of the Anunnaki. I was looking up research. I was researching something on Alexander the Great. And I found this video by Matthew LaCroix. It was called The Battle of the Eagle and the Serpent, which was about Enki versus Enlil, and like it flipped my head upside down. I was like, how could they have lied to us about our history? And like I had so many questions, and like that made me kind of want to tap back into the old Art Bell stuff that I had listened to when I was a kid, plus new conspiracies. And then, 5 years later in 2020, I started my podcast, and that's kind of how I got into all this stuff, So yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, what you experienced and what you saw, like the changes, like this is where it keeps going back and forth. And, in order for something to qualify as a world war, that means that the whole world has to be against, like fighting against forces like World War II. Everybody was fighting against Nazism, right? That made it a world war. So World War III is similar, but it's jihad. So they're fighting against the Sharia law and the jihad because they're everywhere. They're not just in the Middle East, they're now in Europe. And, back in the 90s, Mother Teresa, she was a Catholic saint or whatever, but she made a statement. Everyone laughed at her because she said God showed her that Europe was going to be invaded by Muslims. And they all laughed and they said, oh, that'll never happen.
It's happening. It's absolutely happening.
Exactly.
And so is Canada, and so is the United States.
Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly.
You know how I can tell you this and I'm not being rude. I'm not being racist towards anybody, but every vape store around here where I live, or every gas station, and they bought like donut places, Middle Eastern men. They could be Pakistani, they could be Hindu, whatever. But I mean, somehow they get money to come here and start businesses. And I was saying to my friend, I was like, well, what about us Americans that have lived here our whole life, that we've had to struggle? Like, some of us weren't born with a silver spoon in our mouth. I've had to take shit jobs at times, you know what I mean? Just to make ends meet. And I see the people able to open up businesses. Now, sure, these people could have worked hard for it, but I just find it weird that people from other countries are able to come here and start businesses so easily. And I don't understand how they're able to do that. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense to me. And it's every vape store here is owned by what I just said, what you said. It's I find that weird. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, this is the war, that has come through Obama's administration. Kind of opened the door to that. I mean, he opened the door to the Muslim invasion. That's what started it, when he didn't keep that red line in Syria, and then they all invaded Europe. So that's how that began. And then they came in, were allowed to come in here. And this is what the political battle has been over our borders. So, and that's also Trump's MO is to secure America from any further invasion. But, there's an old saying, the camel's nose is already under the tent. So, and they have an agenda. And, Iranians have been celebrating both Israel and America, because they see Israel and America as liberators from this evil regime. 99% of Iranians don't want this. They want to go back to where it was in 1979, before the Shah was deposed, when Iran was a cool place to go, and it was secular, and they were growing and evolving and advancing. And now everyone is suppressed. They want their life back. So this is part of a world war against jihad.
My friend Indigo Angel speaks out against this a lot. You might, if you ever want to check out her channel, she's really outspoken against exactly what you're talking about. And she showed these pictures of these women from Middle Eastern countries of their traditional garb or their traditional wear, and it wasn't the hijab. She showed Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, and they had on these beautiful dresses with long hair, and you could see that they're beautiful features, and it wasn't with the hijab,
Yes, I have that same video. I just shared it on my Facebook last week. I totally agree with that. I mean, this is the real war on women, is Sharia law. And so there's Iranians that left Iran and they live in Canada, and they're dealing with the same thing there. You would think, well, they thought they were safe in Canada, but now Canada has this issue, and parts of the United States as well. So this is what qualifies as a world war. So it's not just the whole world goes against Israel. Israel is the place in the Middle East that stands for women's rights, women's equality. Women have been prime ministers in Israel. We still haven't had a female president yet. So Israel is way ahead of the world in many areas. So they're holding space for freedom and democracy. And, there's a spirit called Leviathan, who lives, another alien that lives inside the earth.
It's under the sea, right? My friend Renetta talked about this. She died recently, but Leviathan comes from under the sea, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes, and it's alive and lives in the earth, and the whole book of Job is about it, and only God can subdue it. But this is an evil ancient spirit that is called the king of pride, and it lives off of pride, and it twists all kinds of communication. So it's a cursed thing, like Isaiah 5:20 says, "Woe to you who turns evil into good, good into evil, light into dark, dark into light." And this is what it does. So it takes the truth and twists it around. It's like classic psychological narcissistic projection, which is why the world, and there's an old saying that a lie travels halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on. And that's why people have distorted what's going on between the Israelis and the Hamas war in Gaza, and it's like, oh, Israel is genociding them. It's like, no, it's the other way around. I mean, yeah, people die as part of collateral damage from a war, but Hamas has been holding their own people hostage. So as well as us and Americans and Israelis. So this is an ongoing thing, and it's biblical. It's actually in the
Do you
Bible.
think that's Sorry, I have to bring this up. I got to get your opinion on this because I know, but this isn't like me saying this. You hear from conspiracy theorists that some people that are like, they say they go hardcore against Israel because there are those people. They say that like Israel's starving Palestine out. Like, do you have an opinion on that? And like, what do you think?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, not just an opinion. I have the truth and the facts speak for themselves. Israel takes all these people into their hospitals and treats them. I mean, it's such a distorted, blatant lie. The propaganda, the first casualty of war is the truth. So that's the first thing, like October 7th of 23, that's the first thing out the gate was twist what happened. Hamas came in, attacked Israel, brutally raped, murdered, mutilated, burned babies alive. Talk about genocide. It was a second Holocaust. But yet the world doesn't get that story. They get, Israel is, because they retaliated against Gaza, and they get that. They're the attackers. No, they're defending. And what happened, during World War II, which was, they wanted to genocide the Jews. Hey, another evidence of reincarnation. How many centuries have they tried to genocide the Jews? There's a Haman in every century. In fact, the Nuremberg trials, I have this whole chapter in my book, was prophetic because, Queen Esther had this prophecy about that there was going to come a time where Haman and his sons were going to reincarnate and try again to genocide the Jews. And during the Nuremberg trial, they actually made reference to it, that they were the reincarnation of Haman. So every generation has tried to genocide Jews, and what keeps happening? They're still on the earth because God reincarnates them. So that's his way of saying, no, I'm not going to let you do that.
I want to, because I don't want the chat to get volatile, so I'll try to switch up the chat a little bit. Like, it's okay. People can get heated about this topic. It's okay. It's totally okay. But like, what I wanted to ask you was, I'll go back to ufology a little bit because I know you know a lot about ufology as well, and this has to do with that. Like, so I just had Brad Olson on the other day, and he thinks that like a lot of and a lot of other people think this too, that like the Nazis didn't actually lose World War II or something like that. That like that they escaped, they went to Antarctica, they built Base 211. That they, and that they were developing UFO saucers, and Admiral Byrd goes down there, and then Admiral Byrd has this weird encounter on Inner Earth, but he also has a shootout with Nazi UFOs, and he gets his ass handed to him, and he comes home, and he says, we're going to face an enemy that can fly pole to pole. And then, then we have the famous 52 flyover, which is where supposedly the UFOs fly over the Capitol, and that might have been the Nazis. Like, and then we incorporate a bunch of Nazi scientists, paperclip, which I think was the most craziest thing to do, because it's like I could see they wanted the technology, but like it was kind of racist too in a way, because like like those guys were like actually really like not just I mean, like I think only one Nazi was tried, like one main Nazi guy, and a lot of the other ones I supposedly escaped. But do you follow that what I just said, or do you have any opinion on it or anything like that? And what do you think?
Yes, I agree. I've also included those stories, especially on Admiral Byrd and his diary, and the Inner Earth, and Operation Paperclip, and all of that is in my first book, Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo, because it's historical and it proves my theory that of the alien presence, that they are living inside the Earth. That doesn't mean they don't come from someplace else originally, but they've been here all along. And there's different factions of them. There's different groupings. They're not all on the same side. And some of them actually have problems with each other, which is why they have alliances with different nations on the planet. So the United States is working with the Galactic Federation on Earth, which is inside the Earth. So Chaim Eshed, the retired Israeli space chief, would be a whistleblower in 2020 during the pandemic, kind of went under the radar, but it's still out there, wrote a book about it, talked about it, and said that the United States and Israel are in working agreements with the Galactic Federation on Earth. Now, I'm sure you've heard the term Galactic Federation used in, of worlds, of light, of all these other things, but he was very specific when he said the Galactic Federation on Earth. So I took note of that, and that corroborates with part of what Admiral Byrd talked about, the beings that he met inside the Earth, what's happening, what's coming out of Antarctica. Yes, the Nazis ended up there. They were there before the war ended. They had established New Swabia land in like 1930. So, of course, the Americans and the Russians who won the war got the spoils of war. And the spoils of war was, besides the artwork and all the other stuff that they got, was the alien tech that they were working on. So the Nazis were already working with the aliens inside the Earth. However, in my fourth book, I prove that they were working with the reptilians, because the reptilians not only allegedly gave Hitler a ship, that happened. And they also helped him to genocide the Jews. So that tells you who the reptilians are and what side they're on. So this is the same issue, just a different century. And instead of working through the German Nazis, they're working through the Muslim Nazis. The jihadists are just as on the same level, energetically, spiritually, everything. In fact, it wasn't like foreign, because in World War II, the imams, the Muslim leaders, the clerics, they were working with Hitler. And there's pictures of them because they had an alliance, because Hitler wanted to be, he had this obsession with the Aryan race. And the Iranians identify as Aryans. That's who they believe they are, ancient wise.
There's some truth to that too. Like Robert Seffer makes videos on it. Like Robert Seffer makes videos on it. And want to hear something interesting? The Queen of England. He made a video on her. He called her the Queen of Islam, because supposedly the Queen of England, the one who died, has a relation to Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad. Somehow she's related to the Prophet Muhammad. That's insane.
Well, that doesn't surprise me, because lately the reports are, people can look it up, that her son, King Charles, has a mosque in his backyard, and he's become a Muslim. So look at, they call it London Stan now. There's Muslim no-go zones all over England, all over France, all over Germany. So this is a thing. This is like a real thing, which is why I'm saying that the real World War III is this war against the pushback against Sharia law, because Americans don't want that. We're getting ready to celebrate, have our national party, which is, based on the ideals of freedom. We're not going to let that happen here. Trump's not going to let that happen here. Okay. And that's why, Europeans look at Trump and they wish they had a Trump. The English are always saying they wish they had someone like him because he's pushing back on it. So these are all the seeds, the beginning of World War III, which is evidenced in Ezekiel chapter 38. And it tells you who the whole cast of characters are, the players, the nations that end up going against Israel. So, they're all jihadists, every single one of them. So you have to say that's World War III. It's not the Nazis, it's the jihadists. It's still Nazism. It's the same thing. Sharia law is another form of Nazism and communism, and it's oppression of human rights. Women, and it's unbelievable. So we have to push this back in order for us to be free. And this is a reptilian thing, which culminates in this final battle. So the Antichrist, there's the spirit of Antichrist, and then there's the actual human. And so when you asked earlier, so he makes peace. He's the one that ends the war, makes peace, and allows Israel to rebuild that temple. They have everything they need. Resources, money, the whole 9 yards. They can't build it because the Muslims are blocking it. So he allows that to happen. I was also shown, this is another piece of the prophecy, is that there is going to be a great earthquake that somehow is going to shake the mount, where the Alaska Mosque is, which is the site of the ancient temple. And that's a portal. Okay, so they have to build the third temple in that spot. They can't because the Alaska Mosque is there. So something happens. The Antichrist supports them building this temple. They start the animal sacrifices, which they've already begun off-site, but they put that back into the temple. The world probably decries it, like PETA and those, animal abuse. And it says, the Bible prophecy says that the Antichrist stops the animal sacrifices. And when he does that, all hell breaks loose because he says, no, you got to stop sacrificing animals. You need to just worship me. And he demands them to worship him. And if they don't, it says they get beheaded. So who does beheadings? I mean, the Muslims, the jihads, that's their thing. So we know that this is that this part of the prophecy has to do with the Islamic world. And that's when the Jews realize that because they get deceived by this Antichrist. He is a counterfeit Messiah. He's all, well-spoken, and he has supernatural powers. It says he dies from a mortal wound to the head, and the whole world mourns, and then all of a sudden he comes back to life. He mimics and parallels the life of Jesus Christ, where he dies and gets resurrected. And that causes it says the whole world watches this, because now everybody watches things through our cell phones and all of that, and watches him come back to life, and they worship him. And they worship not only him, but they worship the image of him, which is this holographic AI type robot thing. And that's the iron mixed with clay that we're going into now, which is transhumanism. So he's behind the AI, and that's like humans' biggest nightmare is having, like some evil alien controlling the AI. And we've seen this in the Loki series that the truth is stranger than fiction. That was in that script.
Yeah, so, I wanted to ask you real quick though, what do you thought about the fact that do you think we have I interview a lot of secret space program experiencers, a lot of people feel like they're getting memories back, that they've been involved in these black ops programs, Do you feel that we've had this technology, the reverse engineered UFO craft for a long time, and that we might already, Elon talks about going to Mars. We might already be on Mars. We might already be on the moon. The galaxy might be inhabited, space might be inhabited right now as we speak. Do you have an opinion on that? Thinking about what the Nazis were doing back in the 40s and where we're at now, and was NASA just a front for like the regular space program while we had a secret space program all along? Do you get into that at all?
Yes, I write about that a lot. And I believe, yes, we're already on Mars. I have a story in my first book, chapter Life on Mars, which tells this whole project that was done in 1980, which was the Mars Jump Room, which kind of evolved out of Project Pegasus. They were time traveling and they time traveled to Mars. And there's all these stories and there's all these people. And Andrew Basiago was one of the chrononauts, he calls himself. And
Yeah.
he was in the same class, in the same group as the person who we call Barack Obama today, but back then his name was Barry Soetoro, and his mother and his grandfather oversaw this whole program. So this rabbit hole goes deep. And yes, they went to Mars, and yes, they're underground, and yes, there's bases on Mars. In fact, Chaim Eshed in 2020 came out with his whistleblowing information and said not only is the United States and Israel in working agreements with the Galactic, but they're working with astronauts on Mars. He went into this, and it's in his book. It's all
I remember him saying that, yeah. And I thought, like, but he held such a prominent position in this Israeli space thing. Like, why would he risk that? You know what I mean? Like, to like say something crazy. If it was crazy, why would he even say that? There had to be some truth to it, you know?
A lot of truth. And, 88 years old, octogenarians, they feel he had nothing left to lose. He's lived his life. He's retired. And a lot of them get to this point where they feel this conscience that they have to tell and leave this behind, as the truth behind, as a legacy. Phil Schneider too. I mean, he wasn't 80, but he went through the underground. He had a battle with the Greys.
I remember that. Yeah,
they lasered him. He ends up with terminal cancer, and he came out and became a whistleblower, broke his NDAs, and they killed him for it. So, that's the why people come out late and do this, is because they feel that I say, if it wasn't for the whistleblowers, we'd all be like mushrooms, kept in the dark and fed, what.
Yeah, I have one more question for you. Speaking of that, do you feel like a lot of like abduction researchers like John Mack or even Carla Turner, like were murdered in the 90s for what they knew about the alien abductions, and like that they were getting too close to something and maybe they were taken out? Like, do you have an opinion on that?
I do. I believe that what you said was true, that John Mack was killed, that it wasn't an accident. And Carla Turner was injected with cancer. She died very young, and they wanted to shut her down. There's a battle within the disclosure movement. People want full disclosure. The aliens are standing in the way of that. They don't want full disclosure. Okay, that's just because if it does, it's going to expose their whole program. And
yeah, you know why? Because it seems like less people are being abducted nowadays, and maybe it might not even be going on. But with that said, it seems like that, like the government as well as like the aliens or someone is trying to like cover it up like it never happened. But those of us who listened to Art Bell in the 90s, or we heard the stories of Phil Schneider and Carla Turner and John Mack and Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, and I could go on, and Travis Walton, and we know that something was going on, and how about this? I just found out that Steven Spielberg made a series in 2002 called Taken. So Steven Spielberg was way ahead of his time, because I found out he made Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He made Taken.
That was a documentary.
Yeah, he made Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in 2008. He had UFOs in that, and he made all those Indiana Jones movies where he was talking about Nazis. I mean, like at a time when nobody was talking about this stuff. So it's almost like, what did Spielberg know? I'm fascinated with that. I'm like, and who told him? You know what I mean? It's like, that's another fascinating rabbit hole to me. Like it's like, I don't know. That's really interesting.
I agree. I think he's an insider. I think he's been given information and scripts. Close Encounters of the Third Kind was based on a true sort of part documentary. Jacques Vallée, and, they worked with them. And that's why he was in the movie as a cameo. And, just like Gene Roddenberry, he was friends with these two top admirals that were put in charge of the secret space program. And they were feeding him information. So that's why I say the truth is stranger than fiction. But Star Trek, the original Star Trek, may have been categorized as science fiction, but in reality, it was future science. They were introducing the secret space program and all this high tech stuff through this TV show. And now 68 different technologies that were showcased in the original Star Trek is our reality today. So it wasn't fiction, it was future. Bicentennial Man, 1998, 1999, starring Robin Williams, another one. It was like science fiction, but it was actually prophetic and future science, because exactly what they were depicting in that movie is today's reality, where they were turning robots into humans. So transhumanism works both ways. So it works from the transformation of a robot into behaving, looking, acting like a human. And then there's humans, us guys that are born human, flesh and blood, that end up with all these implants, and they turn them into super soldiers and all this other kind of stuff. And that's another form of transhumanism. That's this end time empire, iron mixed with clay. The iron is the technology, and the clay is an old biblical term for human. Because
they say that when Enki made humans, and he genetically modified humans, he mixed the clay of the earth with something, right?
Exactly. And they were mixed. They were like the first in vitro fertilization. They were mixed in a clay pot. So, a lot of us are like cracked pots, right? And God puts the gold, the kitsuri stuff, that Japanese art where they put the gold in and it makes it like this beautiful artistic piece. That's us. Okay. We're broken. We've been genetically downgraded. We have, we're not operating on all 12 cylinders, which is why we need the Messiah. We need the Holy Spirit. We need God. And that's another piece of all this, is that there's this, battle against God. It's a rebellion. So the rebels, the Satans, etc., they want to get humans to rebel against God. And in the end times, the prophecy says that they will use humans and try to trick them. Okay, this is part of the mass deception, to trick humans that there's an alien invasion coming from outer space, and we have to fight to protect our planet. And basically what the Antichrist is deceiving people to do is to fight against God, to fight against the Messiah, the King of Heaven, that comes with legions and legions of it says white horses. Now, horses don't fly, but what the biblical vernacular is spaceships with horsepower. So this is another way that they're trying to get to divide humans and get humans to rebel against the Messiah, against God, the God of gods, because there's many gods. There's a bunch of little gods. So.
I wanted to ask you one more question, because you seem like you're not just seem, you're a really learned person, and like you're very scholarly, I can tell, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. I wanted to ask you what you thoughts on simulation theory, where do you feel like somehow we could be in somewhat of a holographic universe, and do you feel at the same time, like the people that talk about that we're in a prison planet, like do you feel like there could be some validity to that, like that, like somehow maybe the archons or alien factions, like you said, have taken over this and made it that way? And is that why we experience so much trauma here? And like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure I have a couple people in the audience that would want me to ask you that. Like, so I'd love to get your opinion on that.
Yes, trauma is an implant. Trauma is something that comes on you from past lives. It's generational curses. You inherit it. It is something, they keep it going, because what happens to us when we're traumatized, terrorized, our adrenal glands pump out all this adrenaline, okay, and they feed off of that. So not only energetically, but also like through the blood. So that's all part of the adrenochrome stuff. And yes, it's kind of like the Truman Show, a little bit like a simulation. The archons are mentioned. Ephesians 6:12 literally tells us that we are not warring against flesh and blood, that we are warring against powers, principalities, rulers of the darkness of this present world, who are the archons, and spiritual wickedness in the heavens, who are the aliens. So we are in the middle of this warfare. And that's why we need Messiah. We need someone outside of ourselves to, restore us, heal us, bridge everyone back together.
Yeah.
And that's what's coming at the end of this timeline. So that's our hope.
Yeah. Wow. This has been an amazing show. I thought this was really great. But yeah, thank you. Do you want to tell people how they can find you and how they can get your books?
Yes. Thanks, Rob, for having me. I'm at who's who in the cosmiczoo.com, and all my books are available on Amazon worldwide in paperback and Kindle, and 3 of my books are in audio right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I'd love to have you back on again, and thank you again, and thank you everybody for tuning in tonight. And I'll be back tomorrow. And have a good night, everybody, and thank you.